Hi everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Solo Standards for Piano. I'm doing a little dip for each book. I'm the author of Jazz Piano Fundamentals, books 1, 2, and 3. Ooh. And I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano. And my semester is just starting now at school. And so I thought that I would make a little list of some of the things that I just find myself saying again and again to students semester after semester. You know, those things that if you got paid a nickel for every time you said them, you'd be a rich man. So I came up with 5 that deal with some different elements. Some are voicing, some are improvisation, some are pianistic. And I thought I would share those with you, and then I'm going to link them to my classes. And maybe they will take this to heart, and I won't have to say them again. That's the plan. So here we go. Let's see, what button am I going to press here? I'm going to press that one. Great. All right. Oh, God, I've said this one so many times. So in a 6th chord, like C6 or C minor 6, the 6th replaces the 7th. And the way that I always try to get students to remember this is by telling them why 6th chords usually happen. And they usually happen because we have a melody ending on the root. And although jazz musicians like dissonance a fair amount, we generally don't like the dissonance created by the relationship of that major 7th and the root. And so, 80% of the time that you see a 6th chord, it's because the root is prominently in the melody and you want to lower it so that there's not that. You want to lower the 7th, to the 6th so that there's not that dissonance. So a lot of students, when they see a 6th chord, A, don't know what to do, but B, replace the 5th with the 6th. And those two are next to each other. So that makes a fair amount of sense, but it doesn't actually solve the problem that we're trying to solve, right? The problem we're trying to solve is the dissonance of the major 7th and the root together. Okay? So C major 7, if it becomes C6, we're replacing the 7th with the 6th. All right. Number 2. Don't use the 13th on a minor 2 chord. All right, so as we start getting more and more advanced, dealing with upper extensions in my classes, we talk about the 13th a lot, and that it's a beautiful note to use on a major 7th chord. Right, this A is the 13th here, or on a dominant 7th chord. And in fact, it's actually quite a beautiful note on a minor 7th chord. Right, here's C minor 7th. You can hear that A actually sounds really nice on top. But notice that I've specified here, don't use the 13th on a minor 2 chord. These two together make a 2. And the reason is that note, the 13th of that minor 2, is really the one thing that's distinguishing the 2 chord here from the 5 chord. So that, let's say we're moving from C minor 7 to F7. It's that B flat. So I can keep all of the notes the same, other than the root has to move. But everything else is staying the same, except the minor 7th is moving to the 3rd of the 5 chord. The minor 7th being B flat of C minor 7 moves to the 3rd A of F7. And so if we give that note away in C minor 7, there's not really much to distinguish between the 2 and the 5. So if we're in this kind of tonal context, or we're doing a 2-5-1, which in my classes we're doing a lot of 2-5-1s, if we are doing that, then we want to avoid that 13th. That's not a note that we want to use in minor chords. So when can we use that in minor chords? Well, if we're playing a modal piece, let's say we're playing So What, right, here's the very first voicing on So What. It's got the 13th of D minor. And that's totally cool because it's just a color. There's no progression, there's no movement, there's no motion. So that's all good. So in a 2-5-1, we don't want to use the 13th on the minor 2 chord. Number 3 has to do with improvisation, and that is a reminder to play in phrases with clear beginnings and endings. Even the best students get excited about improvising. They're thinking about something else, and they do these run-on sentence. And they never take their hand off the piano. So I think it's really a great thing to focus on phrase endings. And I try to get my students in particular to end with a short note. And then truly take your hand off of the piano. I definitely have a number of students that think they're playing in phrases, and maybe they kind of are, but because they're just leaving their hand down, it's coming off as that run-on sentence. So they'll play. Right? And that sounds very different than. Right? Sounds very different than playing in phrases with a short note and then actual space, actual silence between the phrases. Number 4, play quarter notes long but not connected. Oh my God, I've said that so many times. I think a lot of students, as they're getting used to jazz articulation, tend to play everything within a phrase legato. So that if we're playing the tune Satin Doll, they play it like that, which you can hear sounds okay, but it's missing a lot of what we really want to get from that phrase. So if we are playing Satin Doll, it could be like notated in a few ways. Actually, not really. All right, so this is a little bit tricky. But 2 eighth notes make up a quarter note, right? 8th plus 8th equals quarter. And when we have these quarter notes, no matter whether they're notated as a quarter note or 2 tied eighths, we want to put a little space afterwards. So I think of a quarter note as a little trampoline jump. That makes such an articulation difference to my ear. So listen to the 2 if it's all legato versus just that little break in there really makes a difference. And then the second to last measure here, boo, is a slightly different rhythm. And here we have just a nice fat old quarter note on the beat. Do, do, dio. We really want a little space after that. So watch out for those quarter notes, whether they're notated as quarter notes, whether they're on the downbeat or whether they're on the offbeat. I say put a little bit of space afterwards. Number 5 is kind of a general one, which is to listen for balance. I find that a lot of students have a loud left hand as they're playing both hands together. A lot of times I think that's because of stress. You know, you try to do so many things at once. But I'm playing Satin Doll, so I'm going to keep playing Satin Doll here. I hear a lot of... And the 2 hands just kind of start yelling over one another, which we don't ever really want, right? So that left hand should be really sotto voce, under your breath. I always think of the oral image of a brush hitting the snare drum. Hear the difference? And that really allows my right hand to play with a lot more articulation detail. I'm adding a number 6 manually here because I thought of it. I thought I could do it slick, like in a really slick, sly way, but I learned I cannot. But it allows my right hand to play with a lot more interesting articulation detail, because I'm not having to yell over the left, whereas if it's no good. So make sure you're listening for a balance. All right, number 6, just added, fresh off the press, is to alter dominance. Especially, as my students get more and more advanced, they're playing a lot of really nice voicings, they're playing a lot of hip rhythms, but oftentimes they're leaving dominant chords really, really plain. And, even before altering dominance, if we as jazz listeners hear a dominant with just 1, 3, 5, 7, even if it's voiced out kind of nicely, it doesn't really sound like it belongs in the jazz genre. So my rule, really almost if you're not playing a shell voicing or like a Bud Powell voicing, you're playing like 4 or 5 notes, is that you need at least one color tone. And I'm very pro having at least one alteration as well. I'll demonstrate. So if I'm playing Satin Doll, if that's the second chord, and here you can see, I'm just playing the 1, 3, 5, 7 of G7. Ugh. That's the 1, 3, 5, 7 of A7. That one sounds okay. It's feeling a little bare, so I'm going to try to add maybe that D flat, or maybe that E is the 13th at least. Maybe the E flat is a flat 13th. Got the F as a flat 13th. Flat 9. Sharp 11, maybe a sharp 9, flat 9. So I'm just looking at my voicings and I'm trying to add at least one thing colorful to each of my voices. All right, here's that whole list of 6 things I'm tired of telling my students. For a 6th chord, the 6th replaces the 7th. Don't use the 13th on a minor 2 chord. Play in phrases with clear beginnings and endings. Play quarter notes long but not connected. Listen for balance. And make sure to add some color or alter dominance. If these all felt like good lessons for you, you might be somewhere in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1 or Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2. You might have some qualities of either. But check them all out. You can order them jeremysiskind.com. I have some nice sets that you can save money on, or order them from Amazon, get them delivered the next day from Prime. But I really thank you for watching. If you've watched this long, say something about school. Use the word school. All right, I'll see y'all later.